It is time now for our KSAT Q&A, and we are joined by a guest that we don't often get to talk to here on this segment. Governor Greg Abbott joins us live today. Governor, thanks for your time. I appreciate you being here.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Let's get right to it because there's a lot happening in the legislature, and perhaps none more high profile, though, or more high priority for you as governor than school vouchers. This is something that has been a priority for you for years. That didn't cross the finish line during the last session, but it looks like it's going to this time. But the makeup of the legislature, it's very different than it was a couple of years ago. You campaigned against a lot of Republicans that stood in the way of vouchers. So why do you feel like using public dollars to pay for private school is a good move for education in Texas?
So first, you got to see what the overall strategy is, and that is, as governor, I want Texas to rank #1 for educating our kids. Listen, we rank #1 in jobs and economic development in so many categories. It's time that we prioritize our kids and prioritize educating them. And what I have found is that in other states that have school choice, they rank high in the total education of all the student body of the state. Easy example is Florida has the largest school choice program in America and ranks #1 for educating their kids. Texas should be on that pathway. School choice will help us achieve a better educated student body.
You know, there's a lot of trepidation about this, and we've been hearing from public school parents and teachers and administrators who are worried that education savings accounts, a form of vouchers, will ultimately harm public education. What is your message to those who see this coming down the pike and are worried about that?
So you are correct. Listen, I've heard all the concerns, and to be honest, every concern I've heard is unwarranted. And I'll use this as an example. And that is those who think that school choice may decimate public schools or whatever the case may be, know that the size of this program is only 1/4 the size of the charter school program. I know charter schools haven't decimated public schools in the San Antonio area or any other place in the state of Texas. Neither will school choice.
But so often these programs grow, right, when they see success, and so therefore the cost grows. So how would Texas, if this does get to your desk, you sign off on it, how would Texas be able to pave a path for what will hopefully be a successful school choice, school voucher program, and also continue or begin really funding public schools adequately when we so often hear, especially from schools in our area, that they feel like they are underfunded. They are cutting staff and cutting programming as we speak.
So that starts with what we're working on this session right now, and that is to ensure we will end this session by fully funding all of our public schools. That includes in the Texas House a budget of as much as close to $8 billion in additional funding for schools, including prioritization for teacher pay raises. We will end this session with teachers making more than they've ever made before with a very large pay raise across the state. So we want to attract the best teachers and have those teachers educate our students either in public school or private school or charter school, the school of a parent's choice, knowing that a parent knows far better the needs of their unique child than anybody else does.
I'm glad you mentioned the increase in funding, roughly $8 billion. You talk about pay raises, that's part of that. That's also a roughly $400 per student increase in school funding for public schools. That dollar amount hasn't been adjusted since 2019. Do you feel like Texas public schools are underfunded? Do you agree with that?
So listen, we've continued to fund them. There's a lot of confusion about this. There was actually a $6 billion increase in funding for them last session. And if you look at the per pupil funding that you were talking about, that falls under what's categorized as the basic allotment. The basic allotment provides only a little bit more than $6,000 per student. Texas, on average, across the state is spending close to $15,000, about $9,000 more than that basic allotment. So there's a lot of confusion that is sowed with regard to these numbers.
So how do we reconcile then messaging from public school administrators, superintendents that are worried about what a school voucher program might look like, worried about the funding that they're not seeing, though an increase of roughly $400. Looks like lawmakers are on track to do that, but that's a fraction of what so many districts have asked for. How do we reconcile that messaging about what you're saying, the money that has been given to public schools, but what the message is from those on the ground, the administrators working in these schools?
Well, two things. One is to make sure that we're being straightforward about the facts. And the facts are these. When we end this session, per pupil funding in our public schools will be at an all-time high. So they'll be getting more than they've ever gotten for public education, and teacher pay will be at an all-time high. And then the other fact is this, and that is, I mentioned the success of Florida with regard to school choice. It hasn't led to the decimation of public schools in Florida. In fact, it has strengthened public schools. One thing that we find in our public education is Friday night lights, high school football. One thing high school football instills in students is competition, and competition makes those teams better. That same competition applies just the same in our public schools, where we want our schools to be competing with other schools to make sure they're providing the best product, and that means educating our kids the best way possible.
Before we let you go, Governor, I want to switch gears and talk about one of the other things that you have taken action on just today, signing a piece of legislation that creates kind of the Texas version of DOGE, the Texas Regulatory Efficiency Office. We're seeing what's happening at the federal level. What do you think this is going to do for Texas?
So listen, as I mentioned, Texas ranks #1 for business. We've been ranked #1 for business for 20 years. But one thing we have to constantly do is to find ways to be better. And one thing I've heard repeatedly from businesses as well as individuals, and that is our regulations are too complicated, too complex, too extreme. And so what this is going to empower us to do is to have the strategies and the tools to make sure that we're slashing through those regulations, making it far easier to deal with government, and as a result, making it less costly and cheaper for people to live under the government in the state of Texas. And so this is going to lead to a better product for consumers and for businesses and make the state of Texas even better.
You mentioned the massive economy we have. We also have a huge international port, international border. We do a lot of business with Canada because of our energy production. When it comes to tariffs, do you think that the impact of tariffs, that's going to be something that is good for the state of Texas? What are you looking at the overall effect to be there?
So listen, we've been constantly assessing this, and we've seen no harm or compromise in what's going on in the Texas economy. As you mentioned, we rank #1 for the most new jobs. Just a report came out how Texas ranked #1 again for the most new jobs. And so the Texas economy continues to grow as one of, if not the economic leader of the entire United States of America. Our partnerships in exports to countries like Mexico and Canada have remained on course. And so right now we're not seeing any detriment caused by all of these tariff negotiations. We do see very publicly over the past few days the Trump administration wanting to advance those negotiations. Yesterday, in fact, I spoke to the United States Secretary of Treasury, Secretary Bessent, about what was going on in the tariff negotiations, and they are talking as though they're making tremendous progress.
Governor Abbott, I appreciate you joining us for this Q&A today, and thanks for your time.
Always a pleasure. Thank you all.
We'll be right back.